Join as we learn Chumash for Monday, Parshas Emor, continuing the laws pertaining the holiness of the Kohanim and their sanctification and what they are allowed to and not allowed to do. Today we continue with the laws pertaining especially to the Kohen's features, disqualification of a Kohen on the count that he may have some blemishes. Chapter 21, verse 16. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lemer, and God spoke to Moses saying, verse 16, verse 17, Daber el Aaron Lemer, speak to Aaron, saying, Ish mizaracha l'deiresam, any man among your descendants, l'deiresam throughout the generations, asher yeh boimum, that he may have a blemish, a defect, loyikrav lahakriv lechem alikov, he should not approach to the altar to offer up God's food. Rashi, verse 17, Lechem elikov, what does it mean, God's bread? Meaning, Maichel elikov, something that is fed to God, God's food, which is any type of sacrifice. Kol seuda kruya lechem, any meal is called bread. Avad lechem rav, like we find in Daniel, where he says that making a meal of bread. So when he uses the word Maichel, lechem, lechem doesn't necessarily mean the actual bread, but it means a meal. Verse 18. Because anyone who has such a defect or such a blemish, lo yikrav ish, should not come close, whether the person may have either a person, an individual who may be either a blind man, piseach, a lame man, oichorum, or a man who has a nose that is sunken between his eyes. That, as we're soon going to see, Rashi explains what that means. Oisarua, a man with a mismatched limbs. Rashi. Kichol ish asher boimum lo yikrav. What it is telling us is about a Kohen who has a blemish is not allowed to bring any sacrifices, and therefore the Torah says and explains in the following verse: Eine din sheyikrav. It is not appropriate that he should be able to bring the bread, bring the sacrifices. Kemo yakriveyu no lefachasecha. Is it says in the verse of Malachi, would you bring such a thing to your master, to you, telling the Jewish people that a person who brings a broken or a blemished item, isn't this not a nice thing to do? Chorum, what does the word chorum mean? Shechoit moishakua, that his nose is sunken in, being shtei einayim, between his two eyes, koichol shtei ein of ke'echav, that one would be able to pass a brush over both eyes with one stroke. Sarua, the word sarua means more. She'echad meivarav gadol mechavere, one of his limbs are larger than the other. For example, eine achas gedela v'nachas ketana, he has one large eye and one small eye. Or sheike achas arucha, he has one hip that's bigger than the other, one leg that's bigger than the other, mechaverta. Verse 19, or isha shayib shever regel, or a man that has a broken leg, or shever yad, or a broken arm. Or gibein oidak, a man whose eyebrows are either so long, or a man with a cataract. Or tevalul be'enef, or a man with a where his eyes are where they're mixed with one another. Oy gorov oyalefes, or he has a man with a dry boils, or a man with oozing boils. Oy meroyach oshech, or a man with crushed testicles. Rashi 20. Sarua. 20. Oy gibein, the word gibein. Oy dak, tevalul, these are names of blemishes which have to do with a person's eye. And Rashi gives us the old French word for it. Shurtziliyash bilaz, shegevine einav, that the eyebrows that he has, se'oron oruch v'shechev, that they're so long that they go and they rest on top of his eyes. Oy dak, sheyesh lebeinav doik, that he has in his eyes, he has some like skin which is over his eye, which we would call today a cataract, which does not allow him to see well. Or he has something else, a blemish, which mixes up his eye, commingling, which his eyes are not able to see. Esa ayin. That's one interpretation. That the black of his eye and the white of eye are mixed together. He has like a string of white which goes through the eye. This is the circle which comes around the eye this colors of his eye, which extend into the iris of the eye, and therefore he's not able to see properly. The Targum Tevalul, and this strand, so to speak, goes through the iris of the eye and goes into the black of the eye, which is that each point of the eyeball is then not clear and it has like this fracture within it. The Targum Tevalul Chilus Lashon Chilozain. The reason why the Targum uses the terminology of tevalul, he says chilas, which comes from the word chilazim, which is a type of creature or fish, which had this white strand going through it. So too the sages have explained what this type of blemish that exists within the firstborn, that of an animal which would make it considered unfit for a sacrifice. They call it at times chilazei, nachash, einav. All of them are according to the different shapes that may have in the eye based on the certain fracture or design, if you want to call it, that was in the eye based on that type of creature. So if it looks like a fish in the eye, if it looks like a chilazain or a snake, is that type of line or sign that you see in the eye that would cause it to be a blemish. Gerev yalafes mine shchinim, different types of boils. Gerev, cheres, shchina yavish mi b'fnim b'chutz. Gerev is talking about, in other places it's called like earthenware seemingly, that it's a type of boil which is dry on the inside and on the outside, just like a piece of earthenware which is dry on the inside and outside. Yalefes, yichazozis amitzis v'lam nikra yalefes shemalapepes. Yalefes is what we would call a boil, which is a oozing boil. And why is it called yalefes? Is because it connects with the person when he walks. Because it stays with the person until he dies. And this is a type of boil that is oozing on the outside, but is dry on the inside. In another place it's called gorav, and that is a boil which is a boil which is wet on the outside but dry on the inside. As it says about gorav ubacheres. When he puts the garav, the word garav next to cheres, which is the oozing boil and the dry boil, which is the one which is like pottery or earthenware. These two type of terminologies are examples of what kind of boils. One is a dry boil, one is an oozing boil, and therefore the Torah uses the terminology whenever he's going to use cheres, which is calling it similar to the earthenware. He will then use terminology also of garefes, which means of garev, which means oozing, and something which is continuously flowing. According to the Targum translation, Rashi explains this means this is talking about that his testicles are crushed, from the word pachtin, verse 21. Any man of the descendants of Aaron the priest who has a bodily defect should not approach to bring the sacrifices, the food of God. Mumbai, he has a defect, he has a blemish. If the bread of God he should not bring up, he should not be the one to offer. Verse 21, the Rabbi Sha'armum, this also includes other blemishes, though they're not mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Therefore, the Torah tells us any other type of blemish which a person may see would be considered as a defect for him to be bringing sacrifices. Mumbai, the Torah repeats it, meaning, as long as he has that defect, he is unfit to bring the sacrifice. What happens if the defect is no longer there? The blemish has now been healed. Kosher will be of it to be able to bring the sacrifice. Lechem elikov, the bread of God. Kol meichel kore lechem, as we mentioned earlier, all food is called bread. Verse 22. Lechem elikov mikoche hakadoshim u'minakochim yeichel. The bread, even though he may not bring the sacrifices, still in all, he is allowed to eat from God's food, from the sacrifices, superior holiness, and as well, Lumina Kadoshim, and from the ones that have a lesser holiness, he's allowed to have as well. Rashi, Mikoche Kadoshim, Elu Koche Kadoshim, these are the superior holiness that they were only allowed to be eaten in certain places, for example, like the meat of the sin offering. Umina Kochim Yechelu, Elu Koche Kalam, these are the sacrifices which are less of a holiness. One may ask if he's allowed to have from the ones with the superior holiness, how much more so he's allowed to eat with those from the Veloma Nemer Koche Kalam. What does he have to tell me one with the lesser holiness? So one can respond, because because if he wouldn't have told me that if it would only tell me I'm allowed to eat from the ones with the superior holiness, a person with the blemish is allowed to eat it, I would say that's allowed even for a stranger, because we see even Moshe ate from the meat of the when there was the installation offerings. But when it comes to the thigh and to the special gifts and the side that was given to the Kohen, he shouldn't eat, because we don't see that a non-Kohen should be able to eat from it, ever. So therefore one would suggest that maybe in those he wouldn't be allowed to eat it. Therefore it says, therefore it says clearly that he's allowed to have from those of a lesser holiness, even though we've never seen any non-Kohen eat from it. But in this case, because he is a Kohen, just he has a blemish, therefore he's allowed to eat from the lesser holiness sacrifices and from those of the superior holiness as well. Verse 23, what is he not allowed to do? But he may not officiate as a Kohen. He may not approach the curtain. And he not approach the altar. Because he has a defect. He should not desecrate my sanctuary. Because I am the one who sanctifies the Kohanim. To be able to sprinkle the blood on the curtain, and to the altar, meaning to the outside altar, they both have to be written to telling me clearly that a Kohen that has a defect is not allowed to do any of these work, as it's explained in Teiras Kehanim. Mikdashi should not desecrate my sanctuary, because if he did do the work, then it is desecrated, and it becomes unfit. Verse 24. And Moshe said these words to Aaron and his sons and the entirety of the Jewish people. Chapter 22, verse 1. Verse 24, Rashi. Vaydaber Moshe, this mitzvah, ha-mitzvah zayis, he told it to the Jewish people because the rabbinical court had the responsibility to educate the Kohanim that if a person has a blemish, he should not be working in the Holy Temple. Chapter 22, verse 1. And God spoke to Moshe saying, now we're going to go now concerning about who is eligible to eat and consume from the holy food. Speak to Aaron and his sons, and they must abstain from eating the holy sacrifices. And they should not desecrate my holy name, that they are sanctifying to me. Ani Hashem, I am God. Rashi, what is this referring to? The word nazru means ein nazira ela prisha. The word nazira means to abstain, to hold back. As it says later on, they will abstain, they will hold back, stay back. This is referring to that they should abstain from eating the holy items while they are impure. This is including even the sacrifices of the Kohanim themselves. Verse 3. Emor aleim, speak to them. And this will apply for all generations. Any man who approaches from their descendants. Asher yaktishu as bnei Yisrael Hashem, that will be sanctified for the Jewish people to God. V'tumasa yalav, and he's in a state of impurity, and he will still approach to try to bring a sacrifice. V'nichrasa nefesh ahim lefanai, he will be cut off, meaning he will die prematurely or childless. Ani Hashem, I am God. Verse 3, Rashi, Kol isha shar yikraf, ein kriva el achila. This is not only talking about touching, but this refers to eating. This is referring to eating the holy items, bituma, when they are in purity, and the Torah uses the terminology b'lashon negia, like touching. Like we found previously, it said in chapter 12, b'chol kodesh le'siga, they should not come close to anything that's holy, and over there we're referring to asara le'ichol, meaning that a person should not eat from it. The rabbis have learned us through an inferment of two, inferring two different verses together and using the same word. Because we cannot say this refers to that they are liable even for just touching it. Because it says that you receive kares, meaning they will die prematurely for eating it. As it says in the Torah reading of Tzav. And over there it repeats it, and it says twice about the punishment, one next to the other. Because if he was already liable to die prematurely and this punishment for touching it, then you don't even have to say if he's eating it, how much more so if he's eating it. So therefore it must be that it's only telling us about eating it. And this is the way it's explained in Teres Kohanim. Is there a case where a person would touch it that it would be liable? Why does it say coming close? So what does this mean? Meaning, meaning this is talking about that he may be fit to bring the sacrifice, but he may not allow to eat it. Meaning, one is not liable for eating something in impurity only if it was brought at the time it was done properly as well. Meaning that if this proper service was done to the sacrifice, that it would be allowed to be eaten, then a person who eats it while he's impure would be liable. However, if the sacrifice would be considered unfit to begin with, and one who eats it, then it would not be considered liable for a karis as well. If you may ask, why does it have to mention 3 times about the punishment that person may be dying prematurely, about the liability of karis by the impurity of the kohanim? So it says, this is already explained in the tractate of Shavuos about the concept of achas lechlal ve'achas leprat. The concept of klal uprat, when I have a rule and a specific idea, that I have to learn it one onto the other. And in the tractate of Shavuos, it explains the idea of walking into the holy temple unholy if a person remembers that he's not holy, and when these liabilities and when these obligations, and if inadvertently they happen, and therefore the Torah mentions it 3 times. V'tumasi alav, and his impurity is on him. V'tumasa adam alav, that the impurity of the individual is on him. Yachol b'basar hakas medabed. I would think that maybe it's talking about the meat, not on the individual. V'tumasi shel basar alav, that the meat is what is impure. Uba toyer she'achal asatami, and it's talking about a person who is clean and he ate something that is impure. Therefore, one has to learn clearly from the verse. Atalami to learn because it's talking about something that the impurity can be removed. Who can the impurity be removed from? An individual, that he immerses himself in the mikveh, and therefore the kohen can become impure. However, meat that became impure, there's no way that you can purify it. You can't immerse the meat in the mikveh, and then the meat will become kosher. Over here we're talking about as well about an individual who can become pure, and that is by ritually pure by going into the mikveh. V'nichrasa, the punishment is that they will be cut off and die prematurely and childless. Yachal, I would think, mitzad zeh litzad zeh, meaning he will be cut off from one place and then go settle like another one, like the punishment that was given to Cain, that he was punished that he will have to go wander around. Talmud Leimar, Milfa Nayan Yeshem, from before me, God says, and wherever I am found, that means he will die prematurely, completely from wherever he is. Verse 4. Ish mizera Aaron, any man from the children of Aaron, v'hu tzarua oizav, and he's afflicted with tsaras that we discussed in the Torah reading of Tazria and Mitzorah, oizav, or he has a non-seminal discharge, bakotchim, and he must not eat from the he should not eat from the holy food until he is cleansed. And anyone who touches anyone who has become ritually defiled, or a person who had had a seminal emission. Meaning he touched a person who touched a dead body. Verse 5. Or any person who has come in contact and touched any of the 8 types of the crawling creatures, that it will come then defiled by it. Or he touched an individual who, because of that, he will also become impure because of it. The whole tumasei to any kind of ritual defilement. Rashi b'chol sheretz asher yitmalei b'shir haroi leilatami. He had to touch the amount of what it would make him ritually impure, which that would be bikadasha, like the size of a bean, of a lentil bean. Oy ba'adam, or a human, b'mes, if he touches the actual dead body, the carcass itself, and that is talking about asher yitmaloi, that would make him impure. Kishi urei, what's the size that would make a person impure? V'zeu kazayis, that's the size of an olive. about 57 mil or 2 ounces. L'chel tumasai, according to all the impurities, l'rabius, this comes to include anegea bezav, if somebody touches a person who had a discharge, bezav, or a woman who had a discharge, nida, a woman during her menstrual period, or yeledes, or a woman who has just given birth, that all of these impurities are the person himself, not because they touch something of impurity. Verse 6. Nefesh shartigaboy, a person who touches any of the above mentioned entities, Vitama, they will remain ritually impure adarv until the evening. They're not allowed to eat from any of the holy food until they must wash themselves, immerse themselves in water which is going to the mikveh. And any of these impure items, halalu, that we mentioned previously. Verse 7. Once the evening comes, when the sun sets, then he will become impure. He'll become pure. Afterwards, he can then resume eating from the holy food, because this is his bread. Rashi says this verse nidrash beYevamis is explained in the tractate of Yevamis that's specifically talking about truma shemuter loch lamad of shemesh, that one is allowed to eat it once the sun sets. Min hakachim v'loy kol hakachim, from the holy food, but not all the holy food, because this is specifically talking about the truma, the special food that is given to the kohen. Verse 8, nevela utreifa, besides all the other things that a person has to be careful about, the kohen has to be careful about, he must not eat from a carcass that may be suffering a fatal defect, from a carcass, or from an animal that may be suffering a treifa, that may be suffering a fatal defect. Lo yechal ish, not eat from it, letamava, because he becomes impure because of it. Ani Hashem, I am God. Nevelo treifa leyechalba le'inatuma hizirkan. Over here is referring to the idea of impurity. Shimachal nevelo iftayer, that if you would be eating from a carcass of a kosher bird, she'ein latuma magomasa, which by definition it doesn't become impure just by touching it or carrying it. Elatuma sachila, the only time one becomes ritually impure is only by eating it. Beveisabli, once he swallows it, then osra lechel bekachi would not allow to be eat afterward. He would not allow to eat afterwards the holy food. Tzadich leimar treifa, and he also has to say treifa, misheyesh b'minit treifa, that if a bird that has the same kind of prohibition, if it were to be found that it's not healthy, yotzen nivlas oif tamish b'minit treifa. This excludes the carcass of a non-kosher bird, which doesn't have the similarity in it into a treifa, which means the prohibition of eating a treifa. The treifa, as we mentioned, is an animal by definition, or a bird that would not be able to survive, has a fatal defect that would not be able to survive the 12 months. Verse 9. V'shamru es mishmarti, they must safeguard my charge, v'lisu alav chet, thus they will not bear any sin, umesu, and because of that be punishable by death, because of it, ki chalalu, because if they would desecrate my home, ani Hashem ekacham, I am God who sanctified them. V'shamras mishparti, how are they protected? Malachal truma b'tumaskuf, to make sure that they do not eat truma, which is the special gifts given to the kohen, while they are impure. Umeisu, they will die because of it. Labmadnu, from here we learn, shemisa b'dei this is not a death which is done by the rabbinic court. This is a death by heaven. Verse 10. V'chol zar leyechal kodesh, any non-kohen is not allowed to eat of the holy food. Toishav kohen v'sachir, a resident of the Kohen's household, or a hired servant by the Kohen's household, L'yechal Kodesh is not allowed to eat holy food as well. L'yechal Kodesh, u'betruma kosem b'damer, again we're talking about the special food that was donated to the Kohen. He is not allowed to eat it. We're not talking about the holy items from the altar. Shekol inyan diber, this is all talking about truma in this case. Teishav Kohen v'zacher, Teishavel Kohen, he's a resident of the Kohen, u'schira, he is hired by the Kohen. These are two types of work that somebody that works for a Kohen. Lafichach toishav is a naked patach. Lafisha dahu davuk. Therefore, there's a patach because it's connected with the word afterwards. What is considered a resident kohen? Feizeu toishav. What's a resident working for a kohen? Zen nirtza. This is a servant who sold himself as a slave for the first 6 years. Then, after the 6 years, he decided that he wants to continue living by the kohen. He's there ad yovel until the jubilee year. Veizu sacher, a hired one. Zeh kani kinyan shanim. Over here, the hired one is talking about a person who's only there for the first 6 years, and the verse is telling us over here that even though he may be your slave, he is not considered part of your property, and therefore he is not allowed to eat from the truma. V'koyin keyikne nefesh, verse 11. V'koyin keyikne nefesh, a kohen, if he acquires a non-Jewish person as a monetary acquisition, kinyan kasbayu, this is considered a monetary acquisition. Yehu yechalba, he's allowed to eat. V'lid beisai, as well as the people of his household. Heim yechlu balachmei, they can eat from his food. That meaning the truma. Rashi, v'koyin kiyikin nefesh, evet kanani shekana legufei. The difference between a non-Jewish slave and a Jewish slave, you're hired to work for you. A non-Jewish slave, the actual person belongs to the kohen. Because of that, they now are allowed to eat from the truma. V'yilid beisei, elu b'nei hashvachis, these are the children of this maidservant, v'eishes kohen, and the wife of the kohen, even though she may be an Israelite, oichelas b'truma, she can eat from the truma as well. Because that's also something that the kohen has acquired. Any person that may be clean, meaning not ritually impure in the home, is allowed to eat from the food. Verse 12. Umbas kohen, and the daughter of a kohen, if she marries kiziyah lishzar, if she marries a non-kohen, he betrumas hakachem leisechel, she can no longer eat from the truma. Rashi, Ishzar, non-Kohen means either a Levite, Levi v'Yisrael. Verse 13. Umbas Kohen keti almano grusha, a daughter of a Kohen who may be a widow or divorcee. V'zera eilan, she doesn't have any children. V'shavel beisaviyah, she now returns back to her parents' home. Kin urel, like she was when she was in her youth. Min lechem aviyah teichel, then she can resume eating from her father's bread. V'chol zar le'yechel bay, but no stranger can eat from it. No non-Kohen can eat of it. Rashi, almano grusha, mino ishazar, she was a widow or a divorcee from a non-Kohen. V'zera einla, she didn't have children, mimena from that individual. V'shava, she comes back to her parents' home. Hoyim yesh lezar mimenu, but if she does have children from that first husband, asur b'truma, then she's not allowed to have the truma. Kozman she'ezarakayim, as long as the children are alive, meaning that she's still connected to that husband when she has children. V'chol zar le'yichal bay. It already said previously that no non-Kohen should eat unholy. This comes to exclude the onein, meaning a Kohen on the day of the passing of his relatives, that though it's a mutra betruma, that he's allowed to eat the truma. That the Torah is stressing the fact that only a non-Kohen is not allowed to eat truma, but an onein, even though he is not obligated, even though he's not allowed to work in the holy temple, but he's still allowed to eat from the truma. Verse 14. A person, meaning a non-Kohen who may have eaten holy food inadvertently, then he must take out the same amount of what it costs for the non-holy food, add a fifth to it, that's 20%, and then he has to give it to the Kohen as holy food. Truma, that he ate truma inadvertently. He then has to give to the Kohen. He has to then give him something. If he already ate it, how can he give him the same thing? He has to give him something else that's worthy of being kodesh, holy. He doesn't give him money. And he has to go take other food, which was non-truma, and they become truma in its stead. Verse 15. And they should not desecrate the sanctified, those that is holy of the Jewish people, but the Jewish people have dedicated and gave it to the Kohen set aside for God. They should not desecrate. They should not give it to people that are non-Kohen, telling the Kohen, this is for you to eat and not to give to any person that is a non-Kohen. Verse 16, thereby causing themselves to bear iniquity and guilt, when they eat their holy truma, because I am God that sanctifies them. Meaning this is going on the Kohanim, that they are bringing guilt upon themselves. They take upon the guilt of eating, that when a Jew would eat their holiness, that was separated for the sake of truma and therefore it prohibited them from eating. So therefore the Kohen has the obligation to protect the truma and to make sure that a non-Kohen does not eat it. Unclus, the Targum translates, when they eat in impurity, they're holding Rashi says this was unnecessary because this was already warned about previously that they're not allowed to eat a truma while impure. This is one of the three S's that in the Torah that Rabbi Yishmael would explain what they would mean. That they're talking about the individual themselves, and this is similar to that he has to bring it on his own, that he buried Moshe and Gai, that he buried himself. So when we talk about these are the three S's that we did in every time in the Torah, the word is S, oisoi, oisam. It's talking about an action that was done by somebody else. And over here he's talking about that this S is done by the individual himself, not by an outside person. Like Moshe buried himself, the Kohen has to be careful himself, the Nazir has to be careful himself as well. This concludes the Torah reading for Monday, Parshas Emor.